In February 2023, a group of smiling German startup founders pulled off what could be called the perfect economic crime, one that no one would ever go to prison for. The leadership of Sono Motors went live and announced the complete cancellation of the Sion project, the electric car that would never need charging. In that very moment, 44,000 paid pre-orders from ordinary customers effectively evaporated, leaving behind a hole worth tens of millions of euros in non-refundable deposits. At the same time, across the border in the Netherlands, their main competitor, Lightyear, collapsed into bankruptcy after producing only a handful of its 250,000 euros solar-powered supercars, leaving creditors with hundreds of millions of euros in unpaid debt. Together, these two ventures quietly burned through more than $300 million in venture capital and retail investment. What aggressive marketers had spent years promoting as the green revolution and Elon Musk's greatest nightmare turned, within a matter of days, into warehouses full of worthless plastic prototypes and lengthy lists of disappointed investors. It was a financial drama of epic proportions, where the promise of saving the planet was used to sell ordinary people what amounted to a technically impossible perpetual motion machine. But let's break down the mathematics of this deception step by step. Chapter 1. The birth of the perfect illusion. The venture capital frenzy began in the mid-2010s, when Tesla's market capitalization surpassed the $100 billion mark, and investors rushed to back virtually any idea at the intersection of green technology and mobility. The founders of Sono Motors entered the market with a brilliant marketing proposition, the Sion, a compact hatchback initially priced at just 16,000 euros, a figure that later climbed to 25,000 euros and eventually 29,900 euros. They promised a vehicle capable of harvesting free solar energy through photovoltaic panels seamlessly integrated into its body. Meanwhile, the Dutch startup Lightyear targeted the premium segment, unveiling the Lightyear Zero with a staggering price tag of 250,000 euros, while promising up to 70 kilometers, 43 miles, of completely free driving per day, powered solely by sunlight. Their marketing message was compelling. Conventional electric vehicles were a dead end because they remained dependent on an expensive charging infrastructure that would require trillions of dollars in global investment. Solar-powered cars, they claimed, would solve this fundamental problem. Riding this wave of enthusiasm, Sono Motors launched an unprecedented fundraising campaign. The company secured more than 22,000 direct B2C reservations, along with another 22,000 expressions of interest from commercial fleet operators. On paper, its order book exceeded 1 billion euros. Customers eagerly placed deposits ranging from 500 euros to the vehicle's full purchase price, convinced they were buying financial independence from oil companies and ever-rising electricity prices. Chapter 2. The Wall of Physics. What the founders didn't tell you. Behind the glossy presentations, however, lay a set of hard physical and economic realities that the company's leadership largely ignored. Under ideal conditions, the solar constant at the Earth's surface is approximately 1,000 watts per square meter. The Sion's body could accommodate 248 integrated photovoltaic cells with a combined peak output of around 1.2 kilowatts. But that was only the theoretical maximum. In practice, automotive solar panels operate at an efficiency of roughly 20 to 22%, while additional losses in power electronics, including charge controllers, converters, and related systems, further reduce the usable energy available to the battery. Under the climate conditions of Central Europe, with its limited average solar irradiance and short winter days, the panels were expected to generate only about 1 to 2 kilowatt hours of electricity per day under favorable conditions. For a vehicle weighing around 2 tons and consuming approximately 15 to 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers in real-world driving, that translated into only about 5 to 8 kilometers, 3 to 5 miles, of additional driving range per day. At the same time, integrating solar cells directly into the vehicle's polycarbonate body panels came at an enormous cost. Engineers estimated that replacing a single damaged door after even a minor traffic accident could cost the owner more than 3,000 euros. In other words, a technology that added thousands of euros to the vehicle's manufacturing cost also increased its weight and complexity, while delivering only a marginal reduction in electricity consumption, often saving little more than the cost of a few kilowatt hours of grid charging. From both a physics and an economic standpoint, the trade-off was extraordinarily difficult to justify. Chapter 3. A trap for the gullible. When retail investors took on institutional capital. Once leading institutional investors and major investment firms conducted thorough due diligence and concluded that the project had reached a technological dead end, funding began to dry up. Facing an increasingly severe cash crunch, Sono Motors turned to retail investors and supporters as its primary source of capital. In 2019, the company launched a crowdfunding campaign that raised approximately 53 million euros from individual backers in just 50 days. Then, in November 2021, at the height of the electric vehicle boom, Sono Motors went public on the Nasdaq under the ticker SEV, raising roughly $150 million at a valuation of several $100 million. But the company's cash burn was alarming. It was reportedly spending between 5 million euros and 7 million euros every month to sustain operations, continue development, and finance an aggressive public relations campaign. To reinforce the perception that the project was steadily progressing, Sono Motors built 16 drivable prototype vehicles. However, these prototypes were never intended to demonstrate a production-ready platform. Much of their underlying hardware, including major drivetrain, suspension, and interior components, was sourced from existing production vehicles such as the BMW i3 and Nissan Leaf, a common practice in early automotive prototyping to accelerate development. The prototypes primarily served as demonstration vehicles, rather than near-production models. As the capital raised through the Nasdaq listing began to run out, the founders launched a last-ditch campaign in December 2022 under the hashtag #SaveSion, warning supporters that the project would be canceled unless another 100 million euros could be raised. The campaign ultimately brought in roughly 40 million euros from supporters before the Sion project was officially canceled in February 2023. The episode became a striking example of how retail investors can continue funding an ambitious vision long after professional capital markets have grown increasingly skeptical of its commercial viability. Economic reality proved just as unforgiving as the laws of thermodynamics. In January 2023, Atlas Technologies, the operating company behind Lightyear, filed for bankruptcy. 1 month later, Sono Motors officially terminated the Sion passenger car program and laid off approximately 300 employees. The company's Nasdaq-listed shares ultimately lost more than 99% of their value, wiping out over $200 million in market capitalization and leaving many retail investors with devastating losses. Meanwhile, the fate of approximately 44,000 customer pre-orders became tied up in legal proceedings, with many deposit holders facing significant uncertainty about whether they would ever recover their money. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the story is that the company's founders faced no criminal charges. Instead, Sono Motors restructured its business, abandoned the passenger car project, and shifted its focus toward integrating solar technology into commercial vehicles such as buses, trucks, and trailers. That strategic pivot allowed the company to avoid complete liquidation and continue operating in a different market segment. The rise and fall of Sono Motors and Lightyear offers a striking case study in the risks of speculative investment during periods of technological hype. Both companies attracted substantial funding by promoting an ambitious vision of solar-powered mobility, but ultimately struggled to overcome the engineering, manufacturing, and economic challenges required to make that vision commercially viable. For investors, the lesson is straightforward. Compelling narratives and bold promises are never substitutes for careful analysis of the underlying technology, production economics, and business fundamentals. Could this collapse have been avoided if investors had scrutinized the numbers more critically from the very beginning? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this investigation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest business and technology stories.